We have to talk about a piece of media that the entire internet is currently screaming about, and they are all somehow entirely wrong and entirely right at the exact same time. We need to talk about Citizen Vigilante. Yes, I am talking about the 2026 movie directed by Uwe Boll. You remember that name? Okay, Uwe Boll, the man whose Wikipedia page reads like a rap sheet of cinematic war crimes. The guy who famously challenged his critics to actual physical boxing matches because they correctly pointed out that his video game adaptations looked like they were filmed through those smeared Tupperware containers. Yeah. But staring in this bizarre cultural artifact is Armie Hammer, a guy who was cast out into the Hollywood wilderness, completely exiled from the A-list, and a man who, depending on who you ask in polite society, was permanently and irrevocably cancelled. But here's the deeply uncomfortable truth of the matter. Despite the shortcomings of the film itself, Armie Hammer actually deserved a comeback exactly like this. And this specific, incredibly flawed movie is the exact cultural hand grenade that was going to give it to him. Now, for full transparency here, full disclosure, I have to lay my own cards on the table. I grew up on, and I'm absolutely a fan of Charles Bronson's Death Wish. There is something primal and undeniable satisfying about the classic vigilante narrative. This concept of the lone man who, after being violently shoved and betrayed by a chaotic, indifferent world, simply decides to stop calling the police, bypasses the bureaucracy, and, starts piling up ammunition. But if you look at the world right now, especially in Europe, that concept of the vigilante taking matters into his own hands is not just some dusty retro 1970s cinematic trope. It is more current than ever. It is practically breathing down our necks. We are currently living in a society where the disconnect between the everyday people living in the neighborhoods and the elite officials sitting in air-conditioned courtrooms has become an unbridgeable chasm. You see this chasm boiling over in the online discourse every single day. People are looking at their cities, looking at the news, and feeling this agonizing frustration about what the internet has crudely but effectively dubbed the Abrodian problem. Yes, I came up with that term, by the way. It's this explosive, terrifying intersection of a two-tier justice system that seems to routinely hand out suspended sentences for, gang rapes, coupled with the absolute self-destructive paralysis regarding open borders. That is a double whammy problem that has fundamentally broken the social contract in the eyes of the everyday citizen. So, the real question, the one this movie asks with, not that much subtlety, is if this country is completely overrun by these very real, very terrifying systemic failures, will ever have the actual guts to get rid of their two-tier justice system and their open borders. The people making the laws don't have to live with the consequences of the laws, and that brings us squarely back to the controversy of Citizen Vigilante. And by the way, just to perfectly encapsulate the absolute state of things, Citizen Vigilante was outright banned in Germany, completely refused an age rating, blocked from theaters, the whole nine yards. Why? Because, I need to be incredibly blunt. Germans are pussies when it comes to confronting their own modern reality. The censorship board cited inciting violence against migrants and called it a dangerous piece of racist agitprop, which is the exact kind of, pearl-clutching reaction you expect from a bureaucracy terrified of its own shadow. They would rather ban a movie that points a camera at the very real anxiety surrounding things like the Hamburg incidents than actually looking at the statistics of parallel societies and the failed integration. So Uwe Boll, in classic, unfiltered Uwe Boll fashion, screamed censorship from the rooftops, and for once in this case, yeah, he was right. Banning the movie just proved the movie's entire thesis, that the media and the courts are more offended by the depiction of the problem than by the actual problem itself. Yeah, but this is a movie review. Let's get into the actual meat of the movie. Because this is when it gets, the conversation requires that you hold two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time. Citizen Vigilante is not a good movie. I need to be clear about this so you don't think I've lost my mind. It is an objective artistic disaster. It is directed by Uwe Boll, meaning the editing looks like it was done by someone who was falling down a flight of stairs while aggressively clicking a mouse. The camera work is nauseating at times. The dialogue is wooden, featuring heavy-handed monologues that sound like they were copy-pasted directly from, 4chan. There are bizarre, disjointed subplots, like a totally random diversion into real estate, that add absolutely nothing and drain the pacing to a dead halt, which is a big problem. The production values scream straight to video, and yeah, they even use stock footage for establishing shots. It lacks any semblance of nuance, finesse, or artistic polish. It is a trashy exploitation B-movie through and through. And yet, despite all of that, it is totally, absolutely, completely riveting. It works, but it works not because of how it was made, but because of what it is saying and who is saying it. Armie Hammer is 20 out of 10 locked in. The man channels a very real, very palpable rage that gives the entire cheap production an anchor of heavy, undeniable weight. He doesn't play this with a wink or a ironic smirk or a one-line. No. He plays an American expat watching his European surroundings devolve into chaos, targeting criminals and lenient officials with a very terrifying, dead-eyed focus. He sells that raw frustration that normal citizens feel. So when you watch him navigate this splinter narrative, you are not marveling at the cinematography. Oh, this is no. You are reacting to the sheer catharsis of the premise. So if you spend 10 minutes reading the online sentiment from everyday viewers, specifically Europeans, the people actually living in the suburbs of Berlin or Paris or Stockholm, you will see this exact same incredibly polarized yet oddly unified reaction. Mainstream critics are having absolute meltdowns, but the audience is saying, yes, the movie is clunky, but finally, someone is acknowledging the reality we see outside our windows. You have French viewers talking about expanding no-go zones and grooming scandals being downplayed, noting that while Boll's execution is amateurish, the societal breakdown that he depicts is ripped straight from real life, from these people's daily lives. You have Swedes pointed out that courts prioritizing perpetrators over victims is the actual crisis of our time, and that they will gladly take Boll's blunt hammer over the total, deafening silence of, you know what? You know what I'm going to mention. Polished Hollywood. You know what they say, that a polished turd, this is still a turd, and that is Hollywood right now. So, there's also an American expat in Croatia recently that posted that Europe is on fire with the exact violence the movie depicts, and that the provocative ideas land precisely because they are so unfiltered. Even viewers from the UK are praising the film's dedication to betrayed victims, calling it essential viewing purely because it forces a conversation about the elite gaslighting on Cologne-style incidents that the media keeps ignoring over and over and over. That is the reason why Citizen Vigilante is currently tearing the cultural zeitgeist in half. It's like this grenade tossed into a room full of polite company. So we have a world where we have a $200 million Hollywood blockbusters that refuse to touch these stories because they are paralyzed by the fear of offending the wrong focus group. But Uwe Boll, being Uwe Boll, I have to give it to him, just kicked down that door and delivered the only version of this story we were ever going to get. So, yeah, it is extremely blunt, prejudice Creed-style piece of cinema with an absolute emphasis on firepower over subtlety. It takes the real-world tragedies, the knife crime epidemic, the gang rapes, the elite denial, the absolute self-loathing empathy that feels like it's destroying the continent, and it forces you to stare right at it. And for that, yeah, the movie is worth it. So, people online are also calling it a provocation, a cultural mirror wrapped in the skin of trash exploitation. And yeah, they are somewhat right as well. It touches on real, practical frustrations that millions of people feel about rising crime statistics that are practically banned from the media, from the internet, from being discussed on a screen. So, yeah, the execution falls extremely short. There are moments that are so cringe I cannot even describe. But the sheer urgency of the topic in today's Europe makes you just not think about those massive technical flaws. You simply don't care about them. It is an underground hit purely because it refuses to sanitize the violence and the failure of the institutions. It treats the idea of a vigilante becoming a folk hero against soft-on-crime officials not as a comic book fantasy, but something based in reality, in our reality, as a deeply necessary warning. So, this movie is a call to awareness. It is an ugly movie about an incredibly ugly reality. The cheap padding makes it feel irresponsible at times, sure, but the courage to dedicate the film to the real, betrayed victims of these ignored crimes completely destroys the lack of artistic responsibility. The fact that so many people are deeply offended by this movie only confirms how desperately this conversation is needed. And it proves that the truth about compromised security gets suppressed precisely because it is too uncomfortable for, polite society to handle. So, yeah, I understand. I finally understand Uwe Boll. We get the erratic editing. We get a canceled actor swinging a baseball bat of applaud at our collective heads. And it's welcomed, in fact. It's an entertaining, ballsy B-movie that Western nations desperately need to see, not because it's high art by any measure, but because the challenging, brave ideas it brings to the table make it a gem worth talking about. So, yeah, my name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I would love to know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the scene surgeon. Much love and bliss.